Hey, what's going on there, folks? Welcome back here to a Friday night. It is the Earthmaster here on this end. About 10:33 p.m. here, California time, April 12th, 2024. Latest activity here on the Earthquake 3D globe shows a 2.1 into the area of Alaska. Also some movement down here across the Tonga Trench. Notice a pretty deep earthquake coming in here within the last hour. 4.6. 502 kilometers, so super deep earthquake there into that region of the subduction zone. New Zealand down here still seeing a little bit of earthquake activity in the 3 range in the last 24 hours. Still watching for some further larger scale potential movement there in that area. Get the typical clustering going on out here across the Taiwan area southward through the Philippines. Quite a few 2s and 3s. And a little bit of movement here across the southern edge here of the Java Trench. Not a whole lot of migration up along the rest of the trench zone, but continue to watch that. Super deep earthquake there into the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench. Look at that, 3.9 coming in. Fairly deep to that area. We'll see what's going on out here in the California region. Of course, we did see a 4-pointer out here earlier this morning. Was felt lightly here across the northern California area. As far as any subsequent movement going on there, looks like mainly smaller microquake activity across the area of the Clear Lake volcanic field. Of course, this area is a hydrothermal operation. Quite a few hydrothermal plants out here positioned within this volcanic field. You can see these on the satellite imagery. Quite a few of them. There's probably at least 10 or 15 or more out there producing some energy through a pretty interesting process, but we're not going to go through that right now. 2.9 there around the Red Bluff area on the eastern side here of the Sacramento Valley, just up against the mountain range here. Looks like that earthquake coming in fairly deep at about 27 kilometers underneath this area. Let's go ahead and check out the tremor map here from tonight. This is the Cascadia subduction zone tremor activity with a tally of 67 earthquakes, or epicenters, I should say. These are not earthquakes, these are tremors occurring down into the deeper levels of the subduction zone of the Cascadia. Well underneath this area, about 35 to 45 kilometers or so, sometimes deeper. But still looking at quiet conditions in terms of the amount of tremor activity that we've seen in years past. So definitely something going on up there across the Cascadia that's somewhat out of the norm here recently. Into the Pacific Northwest, Mount St. Helens area, seeing a handful of smaller quakes, mainly up there across the Summit region. Really nothing major going on here, but still little activity. I want to check out the Mount St. Helens seismograph station and see what's being reported out here. Here's some of that earthquake activity there around the summit. This station right here should do just fine in terms of monitoring the data. So we'll check this out here real quick. There's a couple earthquakes here. Look at that. See these little spikes showing up here on the seismograph station here in the last few hours. And that's just looks like in the last 5 hours or so. Last 24 hours. Goodness, actually looks like there's quite a bit of earthquake activity. If you want to count all of these little spikes here, it does look like there's potentially maybe a little swarm starting up out here. These are very small earthquakes. In fact, the largest one there, as you've seen, is a point... goodness. A negative earthquake, 0.01. So there's really not a whole lot of large earthquake activity, obviously, here. But a whole bunch of small, very small microquake activity. I'm seeing all these across the map here, or at least on the graph. There's some S waves from a distant earthquake. I believe that's going to be the... I think that's a 5.8 there that kicked off there in the Solomon Islands area this morning, showing up across the seismograph station here. So aside from that, we'll continue to watch that. Just a little microquake activity stirring up out there around the Mount St. Helens area. All right, going back down here into California, the Bay Area looks somewhat cluttered here in terms of earthquake activity. As we zoom in, there's a handful of earthquakes at various fault systems out here, mostly smaller microquakes underneath the 2.5 level. The last one here, a 1.8 on the San Andreas Fault specifically here earlier this afternoon. So a mixed bag of earthquake activity out here. So we'll continue to watch that. I know this area around the Parkfield area down south here along the creeping segment of the San Andreas Fault is somewhat overdue in terms of their regular occurrence intervals of at least a 6.0 earthquake. It's been, 2004 was the last time we've seen a 6-pointer out here along the creeping segment of the San Andreas Fault. So we're coming up here on the regular 22, at least an average 22-year interval of a 6.0 earthquake along the creeping segment of the San Andreas Fault. So we'll continue to watch that. Definitely has been somewhat heightened out here in terms of a multitude of earthquakes. Southern California, a little different story. Not a whole lot going on down here right now. A small amount down across the Imperial Fault here. A couple ones coming in. But aside from that, even, with all the built-up strain and whatnot here across the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault, it continues to be quiet. Eventually, that will not be the case out there, though. Yellowstone National Park, nothing showing up there across the map, so let's see what we got, though. I want to double check. There's some wind events out there earlier. I discussed this on my earlier update today. What to look for when you look at these seismograph stations here, right? Those are not magma tremors or harmonic tremors, anything to do with volcanic activity, but environmental noise. A lot of times, thunderstorms and wind events stir up there in the afternoon time period, and that's what we've seen earlier today. In terms of wind, not thunderstorms, but mainly in the summertime, we'll see thunderstorm activity stir up there across Yellowstone, and it will give the same visual effect out here across these seismograph stations. But not a whole lot of earthquake activity out there for now. Across the rest of the country, some minimal movement out here across Texas and Oklahoma. One earthquake outside of the Amarillo region, a little 2.2. Don't really see too much earthquake activity up here, but let's see what we got positioned up here. Looks like it's just outside of town there, out in this field, about 7 kilometers underneath this area. A little uncertain on the oil field and pumping operations out here. Maybe some older pumping operations out here. I'm not for sure, but I'm not really seeing things showing up here on the map in terms of oil fields, but a little earthquake activity out there today. Down across this area outside of the San Antonio area as well. This region is riddled with many gas and oil fields out here. Goodness. Check out the satellite imagery. Those little checkered marks out here showing a pad, an oil pad, so to speak, out there. Wastewater disposal ponds as well. So this sits out there in the a lot of oil field area. A couple of smaller earthquakes out there today. Sometimes we'll see these things really ramp up with 30 or 40 or more earthquakes in a single day. But for now, somewhat minimal activity out there. New Madrid seismic zone had a 2.8 earlier this morning, just letting us know that things are still building up out here. Now, this is not a plate boundary, but a fault system out here. Even though this area and all these regions are far away from the plate boundary, the strain and the stress builds up out here. You don't have to be specifically within a plate boundary here, say California, to see built up strain and stress across various faults. Some of these, take longer than others compared to regions across California. It takes a couple hundred years or so to see built up strain out here in these intraplate areas, these little fault systems out here. But California, obviously we built up quite a bit of strain here throughout time, and the southern branch here of the San Andreas Fault, well overdue in terms of producing a big earthquake. The southern branch specifically, about 300 years or so. So it's there. The strain definitely has been building up there for quite a while. New Madrid seismic zone is kind of hard to say exactly how much longer in terms of years before we see another large earthquake out here. The last large earthquake, series of earthquakes, was back in the early 1800s, 1811, 1812. A bunch of earthquakes rocked this area well before the developed land out here. So either way, these little earthquakes just tell us that things are still active out there. Across New Jersey, it looks like we did see a couple more earthquakes this morning, a 1.8 and a 1.9 in this area that's seen a 4.8 out here in the last week. So things they're mellowing out across the New Jersey area, but still staying somewhat active. Got a 4.6 out here in the northern East Pacific Rise. A couple different fracture zones out here in the oceanic crust. Aside from that, let's see this earthquake here around the Mexico area, just off the coast of Mexico. That is at the northern end of the Middle America Trench, of 4.2 coming in earlier today. This region around here has been seeing quite a bit of swarming recently. It still looks fairly active out here, but a lot of this movement from earlier looks like in the red circles, but we'll definitely continue to watch that. South America region, a handful of earthquakes down here, 3s and 2s, and looks like there is a 4-pointer down there into the Chile area. Looks like a 4.0 coming in to the area. A couple 4s down there across this region. The Atlantic Ocean, pretty quiet, aside from way up north here around the Greenland Sea, 4.7 coming in. Across this Jan Mayen area, there's a fracture zone out here. A couple different fracture zones there in the oceanic crust for a 4.7. Areas of the Mediterranean, looks like a 4.3 around the Greece area earlier this evening. Far as further activity, it looks like we got a 3.8 coming in. Well, this was a couple hours ago. I'm not for sure why it's showing up on the globe as a new quake. But this area seen a little bit of adjustment here today. Further regions here across the plate boundary, mostly smaller microquake activity out there around the Himalayas. Hawaii, out there in the Pacific, mainly smaller microquake activity. Really not a whole lot stirring up out here. There's a few earthquakes. Excuse me. Goodness, the latest one of 1.7 it looks like here around the Kilauea volcano. Been seeing a handful of earthquakes out here recently. This is the last 7 days. Got about 35 earthquakes here. Somewhat elevated compared to the last month or so. Really not seeing a whole lot of further development out here, but kind of keeping an eye on it. Definitely some movement going on there underneath the Kilauea volcano area. Let's see. Kind of did a zigzag pattern out here. Puerto Rico. Doesn't look like too much activity out here. A couple 2s stirring up there today. Up into the Alaska area. A handful of earthquakes, but this is very typical. 2.1, the latest there on the map. Aside from that, looks like a typical day here on this beautiful blue planet that we live on. Let's check out space weather activity here real quick, see what's going on outside of this planet. And things are starting to cook In terms of the flaring activity, we've gone way out of the B flare category up into the consistent C flare activity, including a recent M flare. Very impulsive, sharp M flare here recently in the last couple hours. It does look like that came from probably one of the far side sunspots out here. There's our old friend 3615 here on the southern southeastern limb here of the sun. Going to be right here. The latest imagery shows that region coming into view. If you guys remember here, a few weeks back, this was the culprit 3516 or 3515. I think it was 3515 or 3615. Goodness, let me look here. I know they have it marked right here. 3615. There we go. This is an older map here, but this is now visible here across the eastern limb. 3615, a giant sunspot, and that is the culprit there of many, many M flares here recently, within the last few weeks here. Once that was on the Earth-facing side of the sun, it's made a full trip around the far side of the sun to provide us with who knows what. It doesn't look quite complex, but still very large area out here. We'll continue to watch that. There's also a newer region up here on the northeastern quadrant, northeastern limb of the sun. Just barely getting a glimpse here across the horizon. We'll continue to keep an eye on that area as well. Either way, things look like they are jumping up in terms of elevated activity. You can see that shown up here on this image as well. Quite a bit of bright features indicating some flaring going on over there. Look at this magnetic prominence here. That's that's a huge area. I think we're going to be looking at some definitely some increasing activity here once those regions come around. Overall threat right now for flaring shows a 99% chance for a C flare, M flare at 35, X flare around 1% or so. Not a whole lot in the Aurora department, but hopefully we can get that to change. All right, Storm Prediction Center, severe weather. Looks like day 4, right? Day 4 is going to be Monday into Tuesday. A big deal. This could be a potential tornado outbreak out here across this area of Oklahoma, northern Texas, and southern Kansas. We're going to have to watch this pretty closely here. The Storm Prediction Center here issuing a 30% chance for some severe weather. And the setup is going to call for the typical tornado alley outbreak out here on Monday into Tuesday. We're talking about Monday night. This could be a big-time threat for Monday night. So we're going to have to pay attention out here. Could be some tornado potential out there for Monday night. Far as the numerical models go, California getting hit out here with a storm system, and that includes me as well. Expecting about an inch of rain here across the Chico area outside of, north of Sacramento. That low pressure center is going to be the culprit of the severe weather come Monday into Tuesday there across the southern plains, and eventually making its way further towards the Great Lakes states up there. And after that, looks like some colder air dipping down here into the northern portion of the country. A little return of some winter. Aside from that, looks like maybe as we head into next week, Wednesday into Thursday, things start getting active out here across the southern plains once again. But we'll have to watch that. It does look quite active. Also something I'm going to try to jump in on and cover on a daily schedule is asteroid activity here. This last asteroid event was a very close call. It wasn't a huge asteroid, but it was very close here, about 11,000 miles from the surface of the Earth for a roughly about a 10 foot to 11 foot diameter asteroid. But we're going to be covering what the NASA site puts out here at the end of our updates in terms of asteroid close encounters. And these are the next 5 asteroid approaches here from the NASA site. We did have a couple today, it looks like. But 2 million miles, though, that's, think about that compared to 11,000 miles on our most recent close asteroid approach. So if we do see something very close to the planet, I'm going to start covering that. And right now, it doesn't look like there's anything of spectacular close range activity. Tomorrow, 317,000 miles for a 21-foot asteroid. It's going to be named 2024 GV3. And we can click on this. We can get the orbital period of that asteroid and look at exactly how close this thing may come to the planet. Now, this is just one orbital viewer. Obviously, it looks pretty close here on the map, but there's definitely a little distance there between that. But I can pull up the near Earth object viewer that shows a little bit more complex and more visual perspective there of the asteroids if need be. But for now, doesn't look like there's anything coming close to the current, or the past, I should say, that asteroid there from yesterday. National Data Buoy Center here. We have put, let's see what's going on here. There we go. Make sure that's working. That one buoy that was out here, I stated what I stated about this this anomaly, and you got to think about this here, folks. If this was an actual event here, a drop here of 2,000 something meters, that's, I don't even know how many thousands of feet. I'm not going to do the math, but something like that, whether it's a water rising or a water lowering in terms of that water column height, something like that would create a huge tsunami. And not only that, that would show up here across many other local buoy stations out here. So I kind of like to pinpoint false information out there. I've seen a lot of YouTube channels, and that they got 500 something thousand subscribers, and some are stating, the information that is correct, and that's an error in the buoy, and some are claiming that it's being hidden by the government. But you got to think about the facts. Think about the realistic of something like that actually happening, that would show up not only there, but it would show up across many other buoys out here, and that's not the case. Same for the wave column height out here recently. There was a kind of a big deal about something going on out here in the southern area off the coast of Africa, in the Antarctica area, where it showed 85-foot wave heights out here, and this was a model that was being forecasted, so it hadn't even taken place, but a model was showing that. That tells me right there that it was a data error. So yeah, 2 little data errors coincidentally at the same time somewhat. But think about this, folks. This is the information age that we live in. Something like that happening would be spread all over social media in a second. So do I think the government is 100% transparent with us? Absolutely not. But something like this, you couldn't hide. So when I see events like this, and I see channels out here on YouTube fear-mongering something like this, I kind of like to call it out. And when I call it out, I call out the facts and see what's really taking place out here, that it was just an error. These things always go into some type of malfunction mode. We've seen something here back off the remember the Java Trench. They still haven't even fixed it. I think it was one of these out here that showed a some type of similar pattern there, and it just went offline. So, you know, similar to any type of seismograph station, if I see something showing up here on this model, look at this right here, for example. This is going to be a station there in the west boundary. Kind of looks like an earthquake signature, doesn't it? But something like that would show up very close nearby, and really not seeing it. That's not it. This is something later, but it should be right about here, and it's not. So that looks like some type of instrument adjustment going on here. So, you know, I just try to stick to the facts. You know, I could obviously sit out here and claim anything, but when it comes to what's right and reporting the facts, that's what I try to stick to, folks. I don't like the fear mongering. I don't do it. I can't. I just can't do it. I can't. I have nightmares about it. Big time YouTube channels, you know, millions of views. 100-foot wave out here. Well, where is it? Where's the 100-foot wave that took place in a confined area? Right? Something like that would be huge news, and we would hear about it within a short amount of time, but it didn't take place. That's a malfunction. All right, enough of my my preaching out here, so to speak. But I just kind of want to make sure that everyone gets. Ooh, look at that! See, when I see something like this, though, that's obviously an earthquake signature around the Thailand area. Pretty decent one. There's some S waves coming in as well. Let's see what we got. Could it be from that 5.5 coming in now? Could be. That's a pretty recent earthquake at 10:44 p.m. about 15 minutes ago. That would make sense because it takes a little while for the S waves to travel there to the Thailand area. USGS not picking up on anything of that yet, but that's a signature of an earthquake distant from this area. 5.5 it looks like coming in now to that area around let's get some details on this, exactly where it's at. 5.5 in the Kazakhstan area 6 minutes ago. It's being reported here by the EMSC, unconfirmed reports. But if you look at this is definitely a confirmed earthquake because it's shown up here pretty nicely on that seismograph station. That's a legit earthquake. There's a P wave, primary wave right here, followed up by some S wave activity. Maybe even a little bit bigger than a 5.5, at least looking at this, that little chart. But anyway, folks, I'm out of here. Enjoy your Friday night, and we'll catch you guys back out here sometime tomorrow, Saturday. Have a good night, everyone. Stay safe.